Hello, everyone. Ibobi Wekenem. My name is Chikezie Ifedobi. I'm a documentary filmmaker and a creative director. On this occasion of the 10th Igbo Conference, I would like to say a big thank you to the organizers for this opportunity and also for initiating this cultural revolution, which is gradually transforming the very fabric of our social consciousness. And I personally have followed the previous conferences, and it has been a transforming experience. And so I was delighted when I was asked to be a speaker in this conference. It is, on my own part, an honor and privilege. My talk today is titled The Nsukka Experiment. I am discussing the documentary film Timeline in the Den. In 2012, I attempted to put together a documentary film on university education in Nigeria. It was quite a monumental task, something we thought we would never achieve. But we braved the challenges to put together an epic and timeless story. It is the story of the first indigenous university in Nigeria, its founding, and immense contributions to the growth of higher learning. So through interviews, rare footage, simulations, and illustrations, we were able to make it as informative as possible, and most importantly, to retain the chronological essence of the story being a historical one. In the 1930s, a man had a dream to emancipate his people from the shackles of mental slavery and colonial subjugation. He understood that the mind was the battleground, and if Africa must truly be free, then it must be mental. And so he decided to build a university, one that would have the imprints, the innovativeness, and the brilliance of Africans. That man was the Right Honorable Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe. He was 30 years at the time. Zik, as he was fondly called, was exposed to the works of leading African minds of the 19th century. These great minds dreamt of a University of Africa, expressing their hope and their aspirations for the restoration of the dignity of the African man. And Zik, having studied abroad in the late 20s, he thought that he could replicate such standard of education at home, but this time the African way. And Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe's educational philosophy expresses his idea of a homegrown, rounded institution, one that would be utilitarian and able to solve African needs. And so he returned to his people and began making moves to actualize his dream. Let's not forget that these were the heydays of colonialism. It was a time when the British imperialism still had its leash around Africa. And Zik, being a firebrand Pan-Africanist, found himself in opposition with the colonial authorities. And through his publications and articles, he championed the cause of the black man, believing that beyond the rhetoric of independence, what Africans needed most was intellectual freedom. And before independence, higher education in Nigeria was either limited or narrow, in the sense that the colonial authorities dictated what kind of profession one had to pursue. Now, from Yaba College of Technology to the University College Ibadan, these already existing institutions were not enough in preparing the manpower that Nigeria would need when it becomes independent. And so the colonialists also had ambivalent views about formal education in Nigeria. For example, Lugard. Lugard thought that exposing Nigerians, Africans, to higher education would radicalize them, and that would make them oppose government. And that was stated in his Education for Nigeria article released in 1914. Now, one could see why Providence was able to position the likes of Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe to champion the cause of extricating Africans from such mental strongholds projected by the colonial authorities. So in order for us to animate this period of history on the documentary, we reached out and interviewed personalities who not only had knowledge of the time, but also lived the experiences as participant observers. Now, some of them before independence were products of either Yaba College of Technology or the University College Ibadan. Now, another remarkable thing we did was to go the distance and have them interviewed in the comforts of their domain, either in their homes or offices. It was really interesting to have these senior citizens, regale the story of Nigeria's pre-colonial educational status. Now, back to the story. It was told in 1945 that there was an attempt to assassinate Zik by the colonial authorities. Now, due to his many fiery publications and articles which were considered seditious and treasonable at the time. So Zik escaped from Lagos and arrived at Onitsha, his hometown. Onitsha being a municipal area, he felt unsafe and needed to go further into the hinterlands. Chief Isaac Mbanefo Odu of Onitsha, a renowned personality and patriarch of the Mbanefo family, smuggled him out of Onitsha and took him to a serene town in the dead of the night. He took him to the house of an equally eminent personality in the name of Chief Aro Ukuta. That town, as we have come to know, is in Nsukka. It was there Zik sought refuge for many months, discovering a location that best suited his idea of an ideal African university. Now, Nsukka at the time wasn't what it is today. It was remote, it was quiet, and it was beautiful. Zik, in one of his poems titled Onuyi Haven, painted a perfect picture of what he saw when he arrived in Nsukka in the early 40s. He called it a place of rest. In his words, the hillocks round Nsukka plains are sentries stationed there by God. It was really a beautiful town at the time Zik arrived there. Zik wanted a tranquil environment for this new university he so dreamed of. One that would offer those in search of the golden fleece the right ambience for intellectual empowerment. Now, various accounts have suggested how and why Zik must have chosen Nsukka to be the site of this new university. Now, one popular account is that of Zik having family ties with the town, and that is not really true. Nsukka being the location of the university was purely a consequence of fate. And now, with its vast expanse of land, temperate weather, and detachment from the flurry of city life, that made Nsukka the right choice to site a university of that pedigree. It reminded Zik of some of those iconic universities in Western Europe. It's also important to mention the magnanimity of the people of the town, who gave up large portions of their lands, free of charge for the building of the university, and also to recognize the roles some of their sons in the Eastern Regional House of Parliament played in convincing the natives on why and it was important to have that university sited in their town. But that also came with its fair share of criticisms, because the elites at the time, especially Zik's contemporaries in the Eastern House of Parliament, rejected the idea of having a university in such a remote area of the Eastern region. They could not fathom why Enugu, Calabar, Onitsha, the hometown of Zik, could be overlooked to have Nsukka as the location. In fact, they called Nsukka a jungle at the time. And I personally think that Zik's choice of Nsukka over all these other towns, especially his hometown, is a testament to his broad-mindedness and universal spirit, which is much different from what we would have today if such opportunity presented itself. And in the documentary, we were able to capture this sequence of history, showing how an idea began to take shape to become reality. One man's heartfelt desire to change his world and emancipate his race just through self-awareness. And it's practically impossible to talk about the origins of university education in Nigeria without mentioning Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe. And so it was really in 1954 that real efforts were made to establish a university in the Eastern region. By then, Zik had become the premier of the Eastern region. Now, that position afforded him the opportunity to pull together the resources, the necessary resources and manpower to concretize his dream and efforts of establishing a university in Nigeria. In the same year, 1954, Zik headed a mission to Europe to attract funds for the development of the Eastern region. On that tour with him, we had Dr. Okechukwu Ikejiani and the then Regional Minister of Education, Chief Ibanga Akpabio, and some other parliamentarians. Now, while on that tour, they studied and digested the reports released by the International Bank Mission on the Economic Development of Nigeria. In that report, it was revealed that Nigeria needed many more universities to supplement the then University College Ibadan, since Ibadan was designed to offer admissions to very few students. It also stated that more qualified graduates were needed to boost the manpower in the public sector, especially as Nigeria was on her journey to independence. And so they decided that once they got back to the Eastern region, the then Regional Minister of Education, Chief Ibanga Akpabio, was going to move a motion for the establishment of a university in the Eastern region, and Zik would second that motion. A very smart move. And of course, that happened, but not without opposition, because the leader of the House, the leader of opposition in the House at the time, who was K.O. Mbadiwe, the famous Uzumba Mbadiwe, and Chief S.G. Koku, they were severely critical of those moves. Now, occasionally, the House would drift into rowdy sessions and intense debates, while some still nursed the ill feelings of having a center of excellence located in Nsukka. Some others thought it was absurd to bandy around a certificate from Nsukka when, some of their counterparts in Western Nigeria had BSc and BA London titles. It was really quite hilarious. So it was all around Nigeria and beyond. Critics took turns in trashing the idea of a homegrown university. Some heavyweights in Nigerian politics, education, and journalism led the massive attack. They were joined by West Africa. Now, West Africa was a journal based in London. That journal published a blistering editorial condemning the idea of a university run by Africans. Now, that editorial attracted worldwide attention, and a number of people came to Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe's defense of what he mentioned was Professor Babatunde Fafunwa of blessed memory, who at the time had just obtained his PhD degree from New York University. Now, he argued that no university outside Nigeria can help Nigeria confront its immediate problems. It must be a university located within Nigeria and not tied to the apron strings of foreign institutions. And unless Nigerian institutions are distinctively Nigerian, they will be worse than useless. Now, those were the words of Professor Babatunde Fafunwa. Now, others also came in defense of Zik. They argued that greater emphasis must be placed on native culture and literature and less of Greek and Shakespeare's, stating that African history, agriculture, home economics, business administration, the social sciences, engineering, education, etc. These disciplines must take place in the great halls of learning in Africa. And these were what the new university, talking about the one founded by Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe, would pioneer in Black Africa. Now, back to the Eastern region. Zik tried as much as possible to appeal to his fellow legislators to allow the bill have a smooth passage, so that at least Eastern Nigeria would be in the vanguard of a crusade to revolutionize higher education. Now, despite the rancor and misunderstanding generated by the issue of establishing the university in the eastern region, despite all that, every single lawmaker in the House agreed, and the bill was passed without division. Chief Ibanga Akpabio, the regional minister of education, while explaining the bill in his opening speech, he stressed the need for the university, the need for that particular type of university, and the title of the university. And on the title of the university, they needed to give it a name. And Chief Ibanga Akpabio stated that they have decided to name it the University of Nigeria because they believed in the unity of Nigeria and also believed that the needs of all parts of Nigeria were similar to their needs in the eastern region. And I have had people ask why the name Nigeria was adopted for a university established in the eastern region. And my reply has always been, what other name at the time could have suited such a university conceptualized to be a center of excellence? And you must understand that it was a momentous time in Nigeria's history. And you had politicians in the eastern region who were more or less nationalists. And Zik, while making great efforts in the eastern region, also played national politics. He knew that there was a race towards independence. And the eastern region at the time was at the forefront of national development. So some of the eminent personalities we interviewed on the documentary also thought that Zik was foresighted and he was brilliant about the naming of the university. Some revealed that if he hadn't done it, other regions would have quickly and proudly done the same. Now, let's not forget that the Ashby Commission, the commission set up to look into higher education in Nigeria, had recommended the need for not just more universities, but universities to be run by Nigerians. So there was really a race towards indigenizing university education at the time. But while that was in the realm of thoughts, the eastern region, headed by Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe, was on the verge of opening the University of Nigeria, Nsukka, making it the first university in Nigeria. And so a law to establish a university in the eastern region was passed in 1955. And consequently, the Eastern Marketing Board was authorized to set aside £500,000 every year from 1955 to 1964 for the immediate building and running of the university, at the end generating about £5 million. And something I found remarkable about the origins of the University of Nigeria, we also touched that on the documentary. It was the fact that the university was built entirely from proceeds of palm products. And that was the mainstay of the eastern region. That meant that the university was homegrown. It was from the sweat of the people. It was from taxation. Consultants were attracted from the United States and the United Kingdom for the development of the university. Now, Michigan State University played a laudable role in the setting up of the University of Nigeria through leadership and technical assistance. Yes, it was going to be a university run by Africans, but setting up such kind of university as the founders envisaged was no child's play. It needed to be midwifed, and that was where the Michigan State University stepped in. By April 1958, a powerful team of academics from the University of Exeter and the Michigan State University visited Nsukka, the new site, on Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe's invitation. They came to inspect and facilitate efforts towards the opening of the new institution. The university was seen to be more American in design, and Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe himself, being a product of an American system of education, wanted it anchored on the land grant system, which was pioneered by the Michigan State University. Now, land grant system simply means self-sustenance through agriculture, whereby government would give grants of land or for developing universities or colleges, and those resources from those lands would be used to sustain and run those institutions and also fund them. And being a time agriculture was Nigeria's mainstay, the university was to extensively promote agriculture through extension system and research. It was also poised to identifying and creating ties with rural farmers in the communities. Now, the goal was that the University of Nigeria was going to cater for the agricultural needs of the eastern region. This was how Nsukka pioneered the land grant system of education in Nigeria. Now, at the time, everything American was seen as a positive disruption. Um, it was seen as a positive disruption in the scheme of things, whether in education, whether in the arts, whether in politics, even in lifestyle. And it came with a radical approach, and that didn't sit well with the conservative British circle. Now, that also played out when Nsukka introduced the General Studies program, which I will talk about later. Now, there were painstaking contracts for the electrification of the new sites, the grading of roads, the sinking of boreholes, the construction of the two giant cylindrical um, reservoirs in Nsukka, and the building of staff houses and the building of the first student halls of residence named after Sir Michael Okpara and Tafawa Balewa. So all was now set for the opening of the university. At the time the first set of students arrived, the university was looking like a construction site. Classes were not ready, the buildings were partially completed, and many of the pioneer students at the time um, came from relatively developed cities in Nigeria like Ibadan, Lagos, and even Onitsha, and they had no idea of the challenges set before them. I had the honor of interviewing and having on the documentary the first registered student of the University of Nigeria in the name of Chief Christopher Enasato, a non-engineering, and he has the iconic registration number of 001 1960. Also on the documentary was Professor B.I.C. Joma of blessed memory, who was the pioneer president of the Student Union government of the University of Nigeria. And they spoke about their experiences and the challenges they faced, how they were armed with nothing but hope and courage for a brighter future. Now, Dr. Azikiwe wanted the university opened on the 1st of October 1960 to coincide with the Independence Day of Nigeria, but because of his position as the new Governor General of the Federation, he had more important roles to play in Lagos on that day. But you know, that gesture of wanting to open the university on the 1st of October speaks volume, because he needed the new university to have a distinct history, so that every time the Independence Day is commemorated, the university will be remembered for being the first in Nigeria. Now, we could see why a lot of efforts were being made by 1960 to expedite the process of building the university, at least to a standard where it would be conducive enough to commence academic sessions. Now, Zik also wanted to prove a point to the naysayers and the unbelievers who fought him all along, and made it look like the emergence of an African university was not going to be possible. Also at the time, Zik was at the center of national politics. We all know the immense roles he played and the contributions he made towards Nigeria's independence. And at every point in time, he had utilized his position either as the premier or the governor general or the president to facilitate the development of and growth of the University of Nigeria between 1955 and 1966. And while he was saddled with these tasking national responsibilities, he prioritized the matters of the university. He was both the chancellor and chairman of the governing council. He presided over all council meetings and its committees. Eventually, the university was opened on the 7th of October 1960 by Princess Alexandria of Kent, representing Queen Elizabeth II. And that day, 7th of October, Nsukka played host to eminent national and global citizens who had come to witness the rising of an African university. That same town, Nsukka, that was the subject of a raging controversy, became a mecca of sorts and would for decades to come comfortably accommodate those who would come to seek the golden fleece. Now, that official opening of the University of Nigeria on the 7th of October lays to rest any argument of which is the first university in Nigeria. By the time the Ashby Commission, which was set up to look into higher education in Nigeria, by the time it released this report in October 1960, University of Nigeria had already opened its gates to 220 students and 13 academic staff. Now, that development forced the hand of the Ashby Commission to recommend autonomous status for the newly proposed universities of Ahmadu Bello and University of Lagos, while Ibadan at the time remained a branch of University of London until 1962, when it was declared an autonomous university. And so, without doubt, the order of seniority among the first generation universities in Nigeria is University of Nigeria, 1960, Ahmadu Bello University by Legislative Act of April 1961, University of Ife, now Obafemi Awolowo University by Act of June 1961, University of Lagos by Act of April 1962, and finally the University of Ibadan by Act of December 1962. And I do hope that this important and verifiable fact can take care of that argument of which is the first university in Nigeria. It's actually an interesting debate, you know. And so the opening of the University of Nigeria really began a revolution in higher education, not just in Nigeria, but also in Black Africa. It was strictly a pioneering venture. It was a daring experience. And time will not permit me in this conference to touch on even a few of the experiments Nsukka ventured, which later became the foundation of many higher educational policies in Nigeria and Black Africa. Immediately it was opened, Nsukka started out from the beginning with some revolutionary ideas and inputs. Firstly, it introduced the credit system of grading, along with a different classification of degree, the cumulative aggregate. Secondly, and most importantly, Nsukka introduced 2 years general studies program, irrespective of the student's area of specialization. Now, these two programs, you must understand, generated considerable criticism from the Nigeria public. And frankly, in those days, no one in Ibadan would invite any University of Nigeria lecturer or professor to serve as an external examiner. And you wouldn't really blame Ibadan because at the time, Nsukka didn't have an external examination system. Because it was actually, Nsukka at the time was actually considered a glorified secondary school, mainly because of its origin and also some of the crazy ideas it came up with at the time. Also, the courses Nsukka introduced made it a laughing stock both in Nigeria and around the world. Today, people proudly earn degrees in education, in economics, in business administration, in music, in fine arts, and so on. All these were courses Nsukka introduced at the time, which brought it a great amount of indignation. But the founders were undaunted. They had a vision to restore the dignity of the African man through rounded and wholesome education. And so in June 1963, University of Nigeria Nsukka, as an independent and autonomous university, graduated the first set of university students in Nigeria, conferring various degrees to its 150 pioneer students. It was a historic and landmark achievement in Nigeria and Black Africa. Now, that was proof that the Nsukka experiment worked. That convocation of 1963 had in attendance renowned personalities from around the world, and the university seized that opportunity to confer honorary degree titles to few of Nigeria's leaders, among who were Chief Obafemi Awolowo, and Alhaji Amadu Bello. Now, despite these achievements in the early stages of the university, it was still being ridiculed and looked down upon, and it appeared like a degree from Nsukka would be disregarded in the public sector. But all that changed when Nsukka graduates occupied the first 7 positions in the Western region's civil service examinations, beating um, Ibadan graduates to the 8th and 12th places. That is from the 1st to the 7th position were Nsukka graduates. The 8th was Ibadan graduates. From 9, 10, 11, 12 were Nsukka graduates. Now, after that, no one dared to ridicule the University of Nigeria again. It became an instant legend in the skeptical West. Subsequently, now what was responsible for that feat? It was the General Studies program introduced by the University of Nigeria, an idea of Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe. Now, subsequently, that program was adopted by every other university in Nigeria, and it was made a policy in higher education. Now, I would have loved to touch on other areas of the Nsukka experiment, exploring the inroads and revolutionary contributions it made in higher education in Nigeria, but I have limited time on the conference to do that. Rather, we attempted to put all these together in the documentary film Timeline in the Den. But I chose to spend this much time to give you a backstory on the foundation of a citadel of learning, an ivory tower, that one that was born out of necessity with a purpose to inspire change at every point of its existence. The founders rightly chose the motto to restore the dignity of man, that is, the African man, to educate him about himself and his world, curing him from the poison of inferiority complex and mental slavery. Now, the University of Nigeria has an organic story, and that was what really attracted me to making a documentary film about it. It wasn't a university merely established by an edict or government fiat. It started out as an idea first, then conceptualized and animated. All the struggles, the trials, and opposition we have witnessed in the story were only gestational, culminating to the birthing of the university. My talk in this conference focused on the founding story up until the opening of the university in 1960. However, there are other aspects I left out because of time. Now, as the title of the documentary suggests, Timeline in the Den, what we did was to encapsulate this series of historical events into film from inception to the present age. We also did feature the war years of the university. That was a watershed in its history. And many do not even know that 7 years after the University of Nigeria started, it was severely damaged by the Nigeria Biafra civil war. And then talking about the agonizing post-war years, which the students titled the Commando Sessions. Now, because of the importance of this era, we had the privilege of interviewing General Yakubu Gowon, retired, who was Nigeria's head of state at the time of the crisis. And also, we had the privilege of interviewing Chief Mrs. Chinyere Asika of blessed memory, who was the wife of the then administrator of the East Central State, Chief Okpabi Asika. It was the Right Honorable Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe who termed it the Nsukka experiment, something that started from nothing. And for some strange reasons, some products of the University of Nigeria do not like to be referred to as Nsukka graduates, not wanting to be associated with the town. I think that's shameful and a sign of inferiority complex, which is what the Nsukka experiment itself had sought to cure. Now, university towns around the world are celebrated and regarded highly. And then these same people would acknowledge those who talk about being Oxford graduates, Cambridge graduates, Ibadan graduates, Lagos graduates. I think Nsukka should be seen in that light. I, myself, I am proudly an Nsukka product. Zek's legacy will not be extinguished. He will remain one of the greatest Africans that ever lived. A Pan-Africanist, a nationalist, and a genuine Onyibo. He cannot be immortalized enough for, for the things he did for his people among the old eastern region of Nigeria and even the entire country. And it is my opinion that young people must begin to worry less about the things he didn't do and begin to build and improve on his legacy. Timeline in the Den was my first attempt at making a documentary film. And I would say this is not the best of my works, but it is the most, by far, the most important. It was quite a task putting together this documentary film. We faced a lot of challenges from finances to sourcing of historical materials and then having to, chase around these eminent personalities to have them sit for an interview. It was quite a challenging task for us. Special thanks to Dr. Ike Elike, who doubles as the editor and assistant director of the documentary film. He was there from the very beginning of the project. And I'm also thanking Professor Chijioke Onwara and Ezinne Ed Keazo. They were very helpful in providing some of the rare historical materials we used on the documentary. And many others who assisted in the production: Osai Christian, Emmanuel, Osaoge, Nick Nonso, Fidelis Okoro, Jeff Unebu, Fem Daniels, DJ Robitones, Chijioke Ngobili, and not forgetting the moral support from Professor Chris Ikwemesi, Dr. Nanna Rukwe, Mr. Chike Ukekwe, and my friend Emeka Amadi. And finally, I'm grateful to the organizers of this conference, Chioma Yvonne Mbanefo and Louisa Ebunike, for this platform they have offered me. I encourage them to continue the good work. They really, really deserve our prayers and support. They have persevered for a decade, and it is, if you understand what it takes to organize and execute, a project like this, you would know it is not an easy task. So I really commend them and wish them all the best, and also encourage them to do more. Thank you everyone for listening to my talk, and see you next year.